Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar. My name is Hope Dorman, and I'm a member of the industry marketing team here at House. For today's webinar, we're hosting a panel with two members of our professional community, and we will be discussing common client challenges. Our first panelist is Heather Cleveland, an interior designer in the Bay Area, Northern California. She's been in the interior design field for 18 years and has operated her own design firm, Heather Cleveland Design, since 2003. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And our second panelist today is Jim Brophy. Jim is a partner of October 5 Fine Home Builders, which is a design build firm formed in 2005 in Long Beach, California. Jim started working in the home renovation industry in 1973 and now focuses on architectural and design team management. Welcome, Jim.
Hello, how are you?
Great. Thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So I know that just about everyone in the home improvement industry has worked with a challenging client at some point in time, and chances are you may in the future again. So we're excited to hear what these pros have to say about how they overcome this challenge. So let's jump right in with our first question. What are the most common client challenges you encounter? And let's start with Heather.
So there's a couple of things that I have found challenging and found ways to mitigate those challenges over the years. I think the main one that many of us designers can identify with is all of the instant overnight experts that seem to pop up kind of overnight. We suddenly had everyone knew everything about interior design, which became really challenging for those of us who actually do know about interior design. And I found that I was spending quite a bit of time explaining to prospective and current clients that what they saw on TV isn't real. So the way I've dealt with that is that I now have several forms that I send to clients at various stages. So when someone makes an inquiry, then I send them a questionnaire that they need to fill out before an initial consultation. And then when they sign on with me, I have a 3-page letter essentially that from soup to nuts, beginning to end, exactly what to expect, what my expectations are of them, what they can trust will come from me, and sort of frequently asked questions. And I found that really helps to be proactive. The other thing that I've noticed recently in the last couple of years is an expectation of evening and weekend time. And as someone who has a young child and values my family time, I've struggled with how to manage that because saying no is a really difficult thing for anyone in the service industry. And so I found a way to say yes, which is that I changed my contract to have evening and weekend rates that are almost double my regular rate. And I found that even those who don't necessarily respect my time will absolutely respect their own money. So I have far fewer people ask for that time now from me. So I can say yes, and I can mean yes, and I can know that if I'm going to take that time away from my family, I'm going to be compensated for it in a way that feels more worthwhile. Those are the main things that I've found solutions to that have helped me a great deal.
I really like that. That's why I laughed. I love having the weekend and the nighttime rate. For me, the first thing I want to identify is this our client? There's a whole series of things to determine if somebody's your client or not, and it is a little bit more intuitive, but it really does come down to, for us at October 5, are they realistic on their budget? And are they the type of individual we would be wanting to work with? And that type of individual is somebody who has the ability to let go and trust and let us do what we do. Certainly the ultimate decision comes down to them, but recommendations and things that follow along the whole construction process, if there isn't a level of trust, it's a very difficult thing to proceed with. And I'll give you a short story. A while ago, we were working with an attorney, and finally, after a little bit, I had to say to him, "Hey, I really don't think we're the right fit." And he was really upset about it. And he said, why? And I said, because you can't let go. You can't trust. He begged and pleaded and asked me to reconsider. And I said, no, really, it's not going to work out. And he finally laughed. And he says, well, I've heard that before. So that really comes down to it. And the second big thing is budget. That is what it drives the whole, for 99% of the clients, that drives the whole project, right? And so the first step is I put the onus back on them to find out if they're really our client. Are you just looking, or do you really want a thoughtful interpretation of what you can do? Okay, give me in an Excel spreadsheet your wish list. Break it into 3 categories. What I have to have, what I'd like to have, and oh my God, I can't believe I can afford that. And I tell them, I will look down at your project and give you rough numbers. And that's where it begins. If they say, no, I can't afford that. I was thinking my budget is $150,000 when their wish list is, $375,000.
Hmm.
So that kind of helps. That's the first hurdle they have to jump.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I know qualifying clients is definitely really important, something that a lot of our pros, I think, struggle with and strive to improve upon.
I know too that there are people, who can be challenging to work with, and for whatever reason. But somebody who's more more challenging, we have to adjust our price accordingly. Like I like Heather's comment about the weekend and the nightly rate. I think that's brilliant. I'm stealing that.
It's all yours.
Thank you.
Yeah, it helps. I think that that the knowledge of knowing yourself and the confidence of knowing what clients work for you is valuable. It's something I'm still working on myself, of really knowing in the beginning who to say no to and who to say yes to. So it's great to hear that's a strategy you use.
Got it. Now, getting to the project process, what tools or resources do you use to keep a project on track with the challenging client? Once you're already in the works, maybe those issues are starting to crop up after it's too late, but you don't want to walk away. So how do you keep those clients on track?
Well, for October 5 Hope, there's 2 main tools. The third tool is the mechanism, is AutoCAD and an estimating software. And then everything is done GoToMeeting. So recently we handled a client who lives in Portola Valley in Northern California. Well, the project is in Seal Beach, and it was a family home. And, she called up, she found us through House, and she had been interviewing people in the area. And she settled on us without even meeting, but we did everything GoToMeeting, from original conceptual schematic designs through design documents, through construction documents. Everything was done in CAD via GoToMeeting with the UDA estimating software in the background. So if she says, I want to go from, oak floors to walnut floors, I can show the instantaneous change in the budget. I don't think we could do it without those tools.
The GoToMeeting, I actually made a note of that. I'm going to look into that a little more. I hadn't thought about it for remote communication. So again, that sort of list of expectations that I give clients once they sign a contract with me is my first stab at making sure that we keep things on track, in that I communicate very clearly that I do everything in my power to keep things on track and wrangle the vendors and the contractor and all of that to, keep them on schedule and materials brought in, but that they have a role as well as clients to really respond to me with information that's been requested by me in a timely manner. And I outline that timely manner means 2 to 3 days is my expectation, that they will get back to me with information that I need in order to move forward on the project. And that expenses do occur if they drag the timeline out. And so that's part of their job to make sure that they do everything on their end that's needed. I obviously have a calendar that's, just a Google calendar that says, when things are happening, like templating and install and all of those things that get updated regularly. And I think the biggest thing is constant communication. As things come up, which we all know they always do, to immediately reach out to a client in whatever way in which you communicate with your client, and to say, the tile came in, it was cracked, or the color was wrong, we're already on it, we're ordering, I've updated the contractor and the tile sub. The sooner you communicate glitches to a client, the more capable I feel that they are of dealing with the stress of it and trusting that you're on top of it. If they find out that you've known that for a week and then find out about it, I think that the trust can slip a little. I found in the early years that I would wait to have a solution before I told the clients, and that sometimes didn't go well because sometimes the solution took too long, or that I couldn't come up with one before I needed to tell the client because of the timeline, and then I lost trust, deservedly so, from the client. So I've learned to just say right away, here's what's happening. I don't have a solution yet, but I'm actively working on one, and I will continue to keep you in the loop as I know more. And then I use the project tracker in Ivy Mark, and for internally we use that, and I find that to be a very useful tool. I use them for all of my billing, and that's how I run my business. But that project tracker is really great because I can update as things, when they're received, how they're received, where they're sitting, when they're going out. In my office, everybody can have access to looking at that. So I don't have to remind my assistant that this thing is coming today. It's all in there. You just open it up and look at everything. I think that the number one takeaway for me is very clear, honest, quick communication with everyone involved.
Well, Heather, I'm going to reiterate the thing about GoToMeeting because it sounds like you would really get a benefit out of it. And the other thing I want to mention too, Hope, about another tool that I can't believe I didn't mention earlier was I depend upon your idea books. I tell a client that you have to create this. We'll create it together. I'll create it, invite you in. But I need you, as you're laying in bed reading your iPad at night, to throw images in. And they can go crazy at first, and I really won't get too involved in it. But as we get down, I ask them to start ranking them and eliminating and get me down to 3 to 5, critical images that they really want. So that has proven for the past 3 to 5 years, I think I've been using it. Every project has a idea book.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's also helpful for you to collect your own ideas. So it's a holding tank for all of the ideas in one space, which is great.
Yeah, it really sounds like it's a combination of project management technology and good old-fashioned communication, and not being afraid to refine your process, as you learn more and new resources become available.
Yep.
Great. So now I know that we have all dealt with indecisive people in our lives. So I'm wondering, what are some of the best ways that you have found to help indecisive people move along in the decision-making process?
So when I write my proposal, let's just say it's a kitchen remodel, then the proposal will actually be broken down into several sections for that one project. So there'll be the space planning and CAD, and it'll have a number of hours connected to it. The research of and selection of materials and finishes, which will have hours next to it, and then project management hours, which will have X amount attached to that as well. And in that proposal, I say, this involves 3 design meetings. So the initial presentation, the second, which is mild refining, and then the third, which is really getting down into the handles, location, and all of the little tiny details in the third meeting. And so if more meetings are required, then there will be change orders, that this is assuming a certain number of meetings, et cetera, in these hours. So I try to be really clear about that. I also I bill every 2 weeks. And so I track where I'm at in the project versus how many hours I've used. So if I know we're about halfway done with the first phase, but we've used 70% of the hours, then I will kind of give the clients a head up and really put the ball in their court and say, we can keep going as we're going now, but you're going to go over budget in terms of your billable hours. Or we can really start to think about how do we come to some decisions now and really committing to certain things so that we can make sure that we come in at the proposed number of hours. And I find that when they understand that they have the power to not pay a bunch more money, they get pretty decisive pretty quickly, in my experience. And the ones that don't, for lack of a better word, they've been sort of warned. They've been given a heads up that, this is not, you're taking longer than the traditional process. I'm happy to do that, but it's going to cost you more money, kind of a thing. But in general, again, it's that communication and just being clear about that, I think people respect.
Very good. I don't know that there's much more to say to that other than using the hours, and we do the same thing. There's certain hours allocated to each stage of the project, and it's really incumbent upon us to keep track of those hours, and that's the easiest thing to do, is to stop keeping track of hours and focus in on the task at hand. But you have to. So one of the things that we did at October 5 to keep us right from the beginning more on target is, if they don't have a wish list and they haven't taken the time to think it through thoroughly, we call it the 7 T's, take the time to think it through thoroughly, we won't move forward. And they have to prove to us that they're serious, they're committed, they're going to put the time in, because this is a collaboration, right? The other thing too is when it comes to, they've picked certain materials and things like that, I want them to take it home and live with it for a week. In the lighting, in the house, in the environment. But ultimately, it does come down to so many hours allocated to each phase of the project. And when they know that they're beginning to run over time, they certainly can become much more decisive.
Yes, isn't that true? I would add one final thing, which is that I have learned to ask who the decision makers are in the process. And I really insist that during presentations, when decisions are being made, that all decision makers are in the room. So, person A can't say I've got to be at work and person B is going to be home and take the meeting, kind of a thing. If person A is also going to have opinions and input, because what often happens is that we would sort of start to move ahead because the person who had been in the room said, yes, we like this, do this, and not check in with the other person until later. And then that person doesn't like those choices. And now we're sort of going round, back to the beginning almost. So I find it really important that sort of respect, I feel the same, that they need to really commit to taking time off of work and coming and being there for 2 hours for a presentation meeting if they're going to be making any decisions, so that we can be sort of concise with that process.
I think what Heather's saying is worth underscoring. If all parties aren't at the table, it really can become problematic. That's why this go-to-meeting thing is so convenient. If whether somebody's halfway around the world and the other person's home here and we're in our offices, we're all on the same page. And actually, we take live notes and put it on the AutoCAD plan. The dates of the conversations and what were the changes that we made. It's alleviated that problem.
Okay. Very good to know.
Yeah, it sounds like you're both making your billing process work for you, and you're getting your clients figurative buy-in, whether it's through the budget or their time.
Hopefully. That's the intention.
And then the last thing to do with an indecisive client is I let them sit. I have a client right now that I don't really know what this guy wants. He has all the money in the world that he needs, But I think at the end of the day, if he can't say I got that for a handsome bargain, I don't think he's going to see himself being a winner. So, I'm on the verge of letting him go. He's had the contract for 3 or 4 months, and he's always got an excuse. And I think sometimes no decision is the best decision when you have an indecisive client.
Yeah, no, that's true. There are certain people that, or they do actually need to sit and they weren't quite ready. And
Yeah, and related to that, I'm wondering what strategies do you use when a client is unresponsive? I know we just touched on this a little bit, but maybe they're causing delays or they're preventing you from making progress. I mean, I know you just touched on letting them sit, but maybe, how many times do you try to get in contact with them before you let them sit? Or, do you have like a contact strategy, anything, revolving around unresponsive clients?
That's a pretty tough situation. So wanting to be upright and upfront, the first thing is if I get that gut intuition that somebody is being unresponsive, I need to know why. And fear is a big motivator, right? These projects can run well over $1 million, and I can put myself in their shoes and understand, if I've never done a project like this before, how fearful I might be to spend that money. So if I can uncover that, that's usually the root of it, and also putting control back in their hands. Yes, we will make recommendations. Yes, we will guide you. Yes, we will try to shepherd you, but the ultimate decision is yours. Now, with that being said, if you are making a bad decision, at least in our method, we'll try to nudge you and push you away from it. But if it gets to the point where you're adamant about, say, putting in something, then my final lever tool is a release from any liability associated with that project.
Right.
Great. I know that the financial aspects of the project are also very important. Some of these projects obviously can get very, very expensive, and sometimes what makes the client challenging is that they're not ready to invest in the project maybe as much as will achieve the best results. So are there any strategies that you use to maybe show them that they need to prepare to invest more? Tips or tricks that you guys have?
My favorite one is I had a client who had a Jack and Jill bathroom, and it was huge. It was the size of a master suite. Well, they wanted two bathrooms out of it for each adjoining bedroom. However, because of the layout of the exterior windows, one of the bathrooms was only going to be about 42 inches wide. So how are we going to fit this jewelry box of a bathroom together? It was rather long, but it wouldn't have any windows. And I remember saying to the client, we need to put in a skylight in here. No, we're not putting any skylights in. This is a slate roof. You'll break it. You'll do this, that. And so that's the first time you let them get it out. And then the next thing is, I think we really could use some light in this bathroom. No. Well, that went on 2 or 3 times. And then I'll stop pushing. But I won't give up because I won't want to see a bad decision. So when the framing was done, I had them line the walls with black plastic. And when he came home from work, I said, okay, the bathroom's framed up. So now with the other windows gone, it was dark as heck in there. Yeah, and immediately he's like, oh, we need a skylight in here. And it wasn't any big amount of money, no pun intended, but it was a difference between night and day putting in that skylight.
Yeah, that's smart to let them feel like they are the ones who came up with the idea.
Yeah, I know that's always a tough one if someone's not on board.
Yeah. But that's part of our job is to, get them on board or explain to them why we can't move forward if they aren't on board and why that is. like that this is for them, not because we have an agenda for ourselves, but that we are the experts. And so the advice we're giving, is valuable advice.
And constantly nudging, to the point where it's not obnoxious, but if it does come down to something that we feel is an inferior assembly, an inferior product, or an inferior design, as contractors being on the hook for up to a year, I will ask for a release. And every time I've asked for a release, the client has steered away from it.
Sure. Yeah.
And a perfect example of that is, and I know this might sound a little bit odd, but October 5 will not install a farmhouse sink. And you would think, why? Well, we're also a dealer for crystal cabinets, some of the finest cabinets made in the U.S. Water drips down the front of that, makes that curve at the bottom, and then lands on top of the door underneath. And I have never seen a farmhouse sink 2 to 3 years later where the sink doors aren't destroyed because of water spilling down the front of it. But, it's going to happen. And I know everybody likes that look. And 9 times out of 10, every client wants a farmhouse sink. Well, I just need to show them pictures of a farmhouse sink cabinet door 2 to 3 years later. And Crystal will break their warranty on the cabinets. Otherwise, we have a major warranty on their cabinetry.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just trying to educate the client. Don't spend your money to go halfway. Save your money. And when you're ready, do it once, do it right, and make it last a lifetime.
Yeah, I would say my business model is probably a bit different than yours, Jim. I'm a smaller residential firm, but I do take on projects that involve anything from IKEA cabinets, with the knowledge that what you shared, Jim, that this is a kitchen that is improving your life for 5 years, and then you're moving out of this place. And we work very closely with clients being realistic about budgets. I have sort of a formula for how much materials, design, and construction breaks down to cost-wise that I share with clients. So when when someone comes to me and says, I've got $30,000 and I want to redo my bathroom, well, then I have to give them the news that you're going to have to do it all yourself. It's literally the labor
exactly.
you have to build it. So that conversation is in that initial consultation. What are you trying to do? What kind of budget? I have a sort of a funny way that I get at the budget, which is I ask for 2 numbers. I say, what do you think, what in your heads you guys want to spend for this? And I'm pretty sure it's going to be too low. I say that. And then I say, what's the number that will get you divorced? And I'll stay under that. And that's sort of
I got to use that one.
and it kind of removes the tension a little, and I say, my goal is not to spend all of your money. My goal is to dispassionately make the selections and to rein you in and allow you to spend in the right way while still keeping you a happy family, right? And because if they want the gold encrusted bathtub and that's their entire budget, it's my job to say, no, you can't have the tub, or you can have the tub, but you can't have anything else, So that's the way in which I tackle the budget is, how long are you going to be here? What do you think you're going to spend? What can you not spend? And you need to understand what you're giving up. If you say this is your budget, then you cannot have all those things you just said you wanted.
Following up on what Heather says about, budget, it is one of those things that is an early discussion. It's almost the first one. Part of my conversation is you have to trust me with your budget. With a designer, interior designer, design build team, anybody who's on the design side, I cannot understand how you can begin to even get out of the gate without knowing what the real budget is.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Sounds like it's all comes down to client education, holding off if you need to save up those funds to do it right. Or, even as Heather said, using humor to lighten the tension to get that final number out so you know what parameters you're working with.
I like that. What's the number that will get you divorced? I have it in quotes now. Oh, that's great.
Funny if we were both bidding for the same job and we both had that quote in our opening.
So moving right along to another scenario many design processes have encountered before is if a client has an existing piece of furniture, or maybe, Jim, in your case, there's a feature of their home that they're not willing to budget on changing. How do you wrangle them? How do you get them to go with your design or understand that the feature or thing that they want to keep is just going to clash with what will work best?
If we have not started construction, I will say, my calendar is quite full with these other projects. It sounds like you need a little time to really gather your thoughts. I'm going to put a little note in my calendar, an alert to get back to you in 1 month. And, we'll circle back and we'll see where you are in a month. If construction has started, that's an entirely different situation. And, I'll start with a few reminders, et cetera, kind of say, part of your commitment is that you'll get back to me in a timely fashion, et cetera. And if that doesn't work, then, contractors have committed to time frames as well, and have also booked jobs that are after the current job that they're working on, oftentimes a year out. And so I will remind them that the contractor is not here indefinitely, and we have X amount of time to get things done, and then they will leave for another job. And so we have to respect their time and schedule in terms of making decisions and getting back to people, and accessibility for the contractors, and all of the things that would slow them down.
Hope, on the question about, going back to that question with they have an existing feature that they want to keep and it's not working with our design. That's a hard question because I don't know that we've ever encountered that. So I don't know that I have any input for that scenario, and I can't imagine what I would do if they did say they wanted, like some fancy carved piece of wood in a austere modern home. I would just have to leave that up to them.
Hey, I think that's an answer in and of itself. So now I want to talk about multiple decision makers. How do you guide those clients to reach a consensus when you have a couple that can't seem to agree on a design direction?
Well, that's putting it politely. How about if you have clients who are yelling and screaming at each other in front of you and you want to crawl under the table?
Oh, it's so awkward, God.
Oh, my goodness. And, people forget that you're there, and they're yelling at each other. And that used to happen more frequently when I would go to visit the client at their home. When I did encounter it before, I try to break them apart and have them each do or draft or place what their perception is. For example, one time I had these two, and we were just trying to lay out some agaves. Oh, and they were screaming. So, for some reason I had, 51-gallon cans in the back of my truck, and I said, okay, you get half, you get half. Okay, you go first. Okay, now, do you see what's happening there to the one? Then pull it away. And basically they were saying the same thing, but they just couldn't hear each other. So it's really just getting them to see each other's position. It's a little bit more psychology than it is anything else. And also being cautious not to be appearing to take a side.
Yeah. I would say that I try really hard to give each of them some of what they want, right? So on design meeting, person A might kind of get a win, and I will end up sort of agreeing with the choice that they've made. but then I try to be very careful that usually in the same meeting later that the person B kind of gets a win, and that I definitely reserve those for when I actually do agree with that person. So they sort of feel that they're both being heard and they're kind of both getting small wins, and working with the person I agree with to sort of help explain and plead the case from a more expertise perspective, so that no one walks away feeling like, oh, she got everything she wanted and I just had to say yes. If they're really, really, really far apart, then I have actually turned down jobs where someone likes, shabby chic and the other person likes mid-century modern, and there's just no middle ground there. I can't find a way to make that happen. It's interesting to see the realization come across their face that maybe this is an impasse that's not going to get resolved.
Yeah, definitely different approaches here. I know, Jim, you mentioned you don't want to take sides, and Heather, you mentioned that you might want to take sides in order to eventually get a compromise and satisfy both people. So definitely interesting that you guys have different takes on it.
And I would say I don't take I take sides evenly. Like, I'm very careful to not leave one client feeling like I've agreed wholeheartedly with one person and not the other. I try to be I don't take sides on every element. And I want them to walk away feeling like they love all of it, even if they gave up a few things along the way.
That definitely makes sense. Now we are at our final question. Have you ever walked away from a challenging client? And what convinced you that it was better to walk away? Obviously, you never want that to happen, but when it comes down to it and you're just not able to move forward on a project, what was that final straw?
Heather, you want to take that first?
Oh, sure. I think all of us in our industry care very much about our clients being really happy. And there are some people who cannot be made happy. And so I really do my very best to try to work through and confront difficult situations and have sit-down conversations to sort of hash out anything that isn't working for them or for me. And 90% of the time that does resolve it. It's just really sitting down. I think people feel appreciated and respected when you say, hey, can we carve out some time and talk this through? I think we've got some miscommunication going on and some tension going on, and that's no fun for anyone. So let's see how we can try to fix this. And I do my best. If I feel, though, that the client is treating me like the help, or if I'm being disrespected continually, and that sometimes is not overt, I often find as a female that gentlemen who are maybe one generation older than me look at me not as an equal sometimes, and so the way in which they talk to me or the way in which they expect me to speak to them feels uncomfortable for me, then I will, just as Jim said earlier, I will say I don't think we're a good fit, and I will try and help you find another person sometimes if I feel that there's still some good energy there. I will try to, refer them to a designer I think is a better fit for them. But, I have walked away from projects a few times when I just really feel that my professionalism, my expertise is not being appreciated. I can only work so hard to do something creative for someone who isn't responding in a positive way. That is a last resort, but it has happened.
Hope, I think the business line that Heather and we and I are in is by nature we're people who want to create and please, and we're giving a part of our soul, our ability to the client, and it's something that not everybody has, right? So yeah. First and foremost, we're givers. We want to fix, we want to repair, we want to make better. There's nothing negative about what we do. But I also have to remember that you have to draw a line somewhere, because if you keep giving, there's no one to blame but myself for being taken advantage of. So I have to always remember that a client's behavior is not specific to me. It is who they are to everyone. The second thing is, it really is my decision to work with them or not. And I really go back to the gut instinct. So if the client is challenging or they're showing a certain level of mistrust, I have to remember that they're mirroring, that they're not to be trusted. They're the one who is coming forward with things that maybe aren't there already, but they're revealing their hand, they're projecting. And it's at that point that I have to have the guts to stop this right now and just basically say, I don't think we're the right fit.
Right. Yeah.
We both had really great responses there. I know that's a tough one.
I know, right? Because nobody wants to walk
Yeah,
away from money.
I was just going to say, it's hard to walk away from money, especially in our industry. You don't
Yeah.
always know when your next job is coming. Even if you have 5 jobs lined up, you still don't know for sure. And so walking away is, it feels a little bit arrogant or ungrateful sometimes to not appreciate what is in front of you. I had to get over that for sure.
It's a hard thing to do, to walk away. Not only for the financial potential reward, but the desire to make something better for somebody.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like a last resort type thing.
Yeah.
So we have gotten through all of the topics we have planned for this panel. Thank you, Jim and Heather, for your time today. This has been an incredible discussion filled with lots of insights for our audience. So I really appreciate you sharing your expertise with the house professional community.
Absolutely.
You're
Happy
welcome.
to do it. Thank you for including me.
So for our audience, that's it for this presentation. Thank you so much for attending, and we really hope to see you at a future house webinar.